Hello, friends and extended family. I today want to talk a little bit about mercy and severity and why they both are important. Um, we seem to be at this crux. We're all stuck at home in this pandemic, and the people are getting a little concerned and worried, and maybe humbled about how impotent they really are um, in their power in the world. And I think it's important that we're able to discuss things rationally. One of my favorite philosophers is Slavoj Žižek, and he claims to be a communist. And he tends to open up people's eyes around some of the sort of authoritarian psychological um, constraints that are placed upon mankind. And he was very useful. If you Google They Live Slavo Zizek, Zizek, or Z, whatever you want to use, um, it was a really great. Like he goes over the movie They Live, which is a kind of a cult classic, um, sort of commentary on sort of the alien mentality that keeps people uh, enslaved via indentured servitude, materialism, drugs, alcohol, that sort of thing. And if you can wrap your head around it and follow his thinking, you sort of go through a bit of a sort of awakening out of the matrix sort of moment where you start to see how you're manipulated without alerting you to the fact that you're being manipulated. And I think this is important for every single individual. If at some point you have not sat down and considered your life and considered that in some way some falsehoods have crept in and perhaps you've been deceived about not only who you are, but where you're going and what exactly you're involved in and how you're sort of kept distracted from thinking about these things. And I think for anyone to gain wisdom and enlightenment and that sort of stuff, they have to be able to look at themselves. They have to somehow be able to gain some sort of objectivity. And sometimes we need help from those who have already sort of escaped the mental prison that um, the uneducated tend to find themselves in. I mean, we're sitting at a crux here and a point whereas rhetoric is being levied with deception and lies to such a degree that people who even have a cursory understanding of history, who must know, at least from some movie or anything, history class, some sort of stories of the past, that the people's fight for liberty, for freedom, often surrounded their right to read, to education, to have access to Bibles in their language. Um, these are all major turning points in history. And now we're at a point where we have this group of rabid, I don't even know what to call them, but this rabid antagonistic militant force that's been um, rallied from the dysfunctional, if you want to put it that way, um, for the most part. I mean, a lot of us have been led down the garden path for generations, and just haven't rubbed up against our boundaries and aren't aware of our boundaries. But at the same token, you know, we can stop and really think about it. Is getting rid of education going to help us to be more free or less free? It's less free, 100% less free. Now, ignorance is bliss, but do we want to be eternal children and and pimped out for our mechanical labor? No, no. Um, so ultimately, I started watching some lectures on rhetoric, and it's educational. It's good to look at it so you can sort of understand how language is utilized to emotionally stoke you to their cause. And you can utilize it in the arguments, and then you can kind of see how it's euphemism and dysphemism. So one making something seem better than it is, and one making it seem much worse than it is. I think is how that plays out. And what I'm trying to put forward through my channel here is a way to make sense for ourselves. And I think the starting point for this exercise, for those of you who have decided, okay, you know what, I've been following along this ideology or this politician or this political movement or whatever for my whole life, and my parents did, and this, that, and the other. But have I ever stopped to look at it to see if it's still in alignment with my beliefs? Is it still going in alignment with my well-being, my family's well-being, my country and community's well-being, or is it being subverted to something else? And I can say with very little doubt that there is a very good chance that what you believe you're following along is no longer the same thing as what you thought it was, or what you think it is now. Um, you can see extreme hatred being rallied. You can see the otherness being rallied. You can see division being created among homogenous groups. This intersectionality is just fracturing the community. And at the same time, there's the opposite side of the coin, the very right wing, that has also been hijacked for selfish criminal purposes as well, or treasonous purposes on the left, and I think criminal purposes on the right. Whereas monopoly and usury and things like that have been levied as weapons against the populace. So ultimately, I think we're at a point where best case scenario is that if we, instead of allowing our physiology to be um, aggravated, full of anxiety and tension and fear and rage, um, we need to take a breath, step back a little, and really try to establish who we are, what we believe in, and where we should be heading. Because most don't know. Most are waiting for the television to tell them what to think, how to dress, what to eat. And if you stop and get really honest with yourself and you look outside into your community, if you're living in the West like I am, well, you can see that people are getting physically sick just by looking at them in some cases. You can see they're getting mentally ill when you see people behaving very erratically and screaming at the top of their lungs and acting like 2-year-olds in adult bodies. Um, I mean, you can look everywhere. You can know your intimate friends and family and how many of them are succumb to sloth, watching television all day long. I mean, and please understand, I'm not judging anyone personally. I also am struggling with these issues and trying to extricate myself from them. So hopefully by the end of the year, I'm going to try to give up the vaping. Terrible, but still better than smoking cigarettes. Um, and the key is to, I think, ultimately for our own well-being and happiness, is to get our temples, our physiologies, our bodies back into some sort of healthier place. So, we're all under lockdown. Before we were in lockdown, maybe we were working, or maybe some were working, 40, 80 hours a week, and they needed 3 meals a day or maybe more to give them that energy to do the work. But if we're all under lockdown, we don't need 3 meals a day anymore. So we can cut back and we can start feeding our minds, and we can study the things that are upon us, because okay, so we've got a group of people screaming about Nazis. Well, this was sort of the start of my political study, is when I was studying depth psychology, and I found that Jordan Peterson fellow, and he had put 2 of his depth psychology lectures online, and I watched them. They were great. I was coming out of some mystic studies, and psychology is sort of a downshoot from mysticism. So between sort of religiosity and just physical. You've got psychology as the study of sort of the mental sphere, originally called the study of the soul, if you take it to Latin. But Jung removed the religious portion and made it into a more secular science. Now, that's good to note, because from the point of Freud and his work and how it sort of uh, was disseminated among the Western nations, is that it was utilized in its full force against the populace in a negative manner, and I'll use Bernays as the example of that, the man who wrote propaganda back in the 20th century, and basically is responsible for getting the women of the West to smoke cigarettes en masse. So, as a female, uh, it was told, and cigarettes were used as a liberty torch. this was a sign of freedom. Poisoning yourself and becoming addicted to cigarettes was your sign of freedom. Bondage is freedom. Can you see that? Can you see how that psychology was used to harm women? Did you get it? So that's how psychology is used against you. Now, as psychology is used against you, your physiology, just like a dog maybe senses fear, your physiology also has senses that are sort of beyond the average person's sort of comprehension of feeling. Where does all that come from? Well, if you go out into the marketplace and into your society and community and you're filled with anxiety and fear and this, well, something is wrong. And your physiology is giving you all the signs. So then you go to the doctor or the psychiatrist or psychologist, and they see that your physiology is stressed out and it's in fear and it's telling you something's wrong. So what does the professional do? Well, he gives you something to shut those warning signs off. Does that mean whatever it was that your physiology was trying to warn you about is gone? No, no, not at all. It's simply you're just unaware of the dangers now, and you're out amongst those dangers that you're unaware of, and you don't really know what they were. So I think these are things to keep in mind. And I'm trying to outline the spaces between the things we know to hopefully help jar some aha moments, some revelations out of people so that they can sort of, quit being distracted and manipulated and look within themselves and start doing the work of organizing and classifying what you have been doing, what you've been involved in, what's been done to you, and then from sort of a place of neutrality, perhaps, if we can get there. It's very tricky. It's very, very tricky. Um, but then we can start to make some more rational decisions, and we can sort of elevate ourselves above from the personal, right? So we don't have to necessarily take offense. We can see that is um, our animal body can be traumatized, can be sort of enticed, seduced, all those things, um, to give us some sort of sense of security and safety. And can be trained against our own well-being and our own best interests, ultimately. Because I can tell you from personal experience that once I was finally able to extricate myself from some of the toxicities that I'd been steeping in from the time I was a baby, that I started feeling better. My life and the system around me sort of turned on me, and certainly didn't make anything easy. But at the same token, even though things were getting worse in a legal sense, in a bureaucratic sense, I was having more hurdles thrown against me. Having a healthy physiology and body was starting to help me to bear that anxiety and sort of step away from it and then see that this doesn't necessarily belong to me, and the body does. And my job is to look after the body and to educate it and to discipline it and to gain mastery over it. And in doing that, as we back into that sort of healthy paradigm, then we can also start taking advantages of some other physical attributes that our body contains that allow us to gain higher insights and to expand our consciousness to include more reality than what we get by simply following along with what the television tells us to think, do, and believe. So hopefully that gives us some ideas. I'm struggling to do the videos. I am depressed. It's it's very weighing because you know there's a lot more alarming things out there than global warming. Certainly, there's pollution, this and the other thing, and people get riled up thinking, "Oh, the world could end in 12 years." The world could end any day. The sun can go out. You know, the weather could go absolutely chaotic and kill us all tomorrow. We could have a meteor hit the earth. All those things. But what is more worrying than the unknown coming to attack us is the known. I live in an extremely winterous region where it gets as cold as minus 50 and below Celsius. And we're all hooked up to gas. You know, there's 1 million people in the city. 90% are hooked up to gas for their heating. What happens if you shut that off in December, in the middle of the freeze? People die in huge numbers. What if you shut off the food? What if you shut off the money? What if we go into hyperinflation? What if the government crashes the dollar? What if we turn off your electricity? What if we shut off your media? What if we shut off your banking ability? What if we shut off your passports and close the borders and trap you in the country? What about? I mean, those are the real terrors, because there's actual people, humans out there that believe they are superior to you and me, and are fanatical in their arrogance that they should make the decisions for us. But the truth is, you as an individual can start on the path of health, mental well-being, spiritual growth, all these things, as we all should, and become more sovereign individuals and get ourselves to elevated places of understanding and enlightenment, whereas we would prefer death over enslavement. Because at this point, I will fight for freedom and liberty and fairness and justice and all these things, because living in a world without those things isn't worth living. It wasn't when Thomas Jefferson, I believe, said it. Might have been someone else, but and it isn't today. And overall, that is really When you go back to biblical times, Cain and Abel, am I my brother's keeper? Um, you know, these are important things, and we've come to this crossroads where we need to decide our values. And as far as I'm concerned, the biggest problem that good people have is that they don't want to lie and deceive people. They want to help educate them and bring them to the truth of things, and try to work out scenarios that are best for everyone to enjoy freedom and growth and education, and working together for a common good, instead of, incessant warfare, profit for selfish individual needs. And I'm shocked to see so many people um, that have been poorly educated into like I was, into a very poor belief system, lacking in truth and values. So, anyways, that's enough of my blathering on today, and I don't even know what I was trying to get across, and not sure if I did get anything across. But here I am. I'm chatting. I'm depressed too, but I'm optimistic and hopeful that the silent majority of people who still believe in the truth and are just fearful because of these roving mobs attacking people for basic common sense, um, and destroying people's lives based on professional offense, and a movement trying to destroy anyone's enjoyment if every single person can't enjoy it, which means no enjoyment for anyone ever again anymore. Um, and people looking for any possible scenario to be offended, or to be offended on the behalf of someone else. And this sort of thing needs to be mocked out of existence, and if not mocked out of existence, wiped out of existence, because it's deplorable, it's disgusting, and it's pure narcissism, and it's pure negativity. It has no plus. It has no positive solutions. There is no utopia at the end of wrecking everything and throwing everything into chaos. That's just a fact.